flipping. It is the main way we interact with the pinball machine.
Most people don't think too much about what their hands are doing when they play pinball, and they're focused on just trying to keep the ball alive.
But there are some simple techniques that can dramatically help players improve their pinball game. Let's take a look at our hands. First, we place the inside of our palms on top of the lockdown bar. Then, place our thumbs along the joint between the playfield glass and the game's armor. This helps us grip the inside of the cabinet to move the game left and right more easily. Then, drape our remaining fingers down the side of the cabinet, keeping the fingers fully extended and flat. In this position, we want both our index finger and our middle finger resting on top of the flipper button. Not only is this technique going to help us flip better, but it's critical for pulling off one of the most difficult techniques in pinball, the stage flip.
Many players may not think too much about how they put their hands on the pinball machine, but you should definitely check to see if you're doing any of the following, as they may be hurting you and your pinball scores.
Don't curl your fingers when trying to press the flipper buttons. You see, inside the pinball machines there are spring switches, a little piece of metal that pushes back on the flipper button. These switches aren't too strong, but players tend to flip really hard because they want the ball to go fast. Curling the fingers over the button creates unnecessary strain that could potentially cause painful issues like carpal tunnel syndrome. Plus, the flipper buttons have a lot of play, and by pressing in the middle of the flipper button, flips will be much more inconsistent. Instead, we want our fingers pressing on the edges of the button and maximizing the surface area of our fingers we use to flip. This will deliver a smooth, consistent flip every single time we press the flipper button. Don't flip with just one finger on the flipper button.
This is one of the most common issues I see when watching beginner players play pinball, and one that I struggled with for a very long time.
You see here, I'm using just my middle finger to press the flipper button, and I see the majority of tournament and casual players adopting this stance. But without my index finger alongside for support, I'm losing a ton of surface area and all the support that prevents the button from moving up and down. Plus, in a one-finger stance, a player's hand is going to retreat back away from the side of the cabinet, and moving the game from side to side is going to become much more difficult. In fact, after reviewing tons of pinball video, most players clearly progress from a curled finger stance to a straight single finger stance, and then eventually to two fingers with the other fingers braced on the side of the cabinet.
But not only are two fingers important for flipping and nudging, they're also incredibly important for stage flipping. And I'll show you a technique that will make stage flipping feel like just another simple flipper trick.
But first, let's talk about post passing. A post pass is a technique that players use when a ball is trapped to transfer the ball safely over from one flipper to the other. A player releases the flipper only to quickly flip again to shoot it into the bottom of the slingshot, and then see it bounce over onto the other side.
And while some people may see this and think it's like a flip and they have to aim at the bottom of the slingshot, this is not true.
Post passing and tip passing are all about timing, and to dial in the timing, the player will move their fingers farther and farther away from the flipper button until they get a feel for the distance. To start, only move your fingers away from the button a little bit, and then immediately push the button back in again. Your fingers can move much more quickly than the button once it's released, so you'll immediately flip again. Sometimes, even though you took your fingers off the button, there isn't even enough time for the flipper to move. So, continue moving your fingers farther and farther away until you can find a distance where the flipper drops, but only for a moment. Then, flip again, and the ball will bounce off the slingshot and flipper and execute a perfect post pass. Now, let's talk about stage flipping. On Godzilla, the player has two flippers controlled by the left flipper button, the lower flipper and the upper flipper. When the flipper button is pressed in very slowly, you'll see that only the lower flipper flips at first, and then later it is joined by the upper flipper. And players who can successfully engage just one flipper, but not the other, are able to open up shots like the left ramp on Godzilla while keeping a ball trapped. But if you're just trying to do this technique by feel, it's going to be impossible to pull this off reliably.
By practicing this technique I'm about to show you, stage flipping will become just another piece in your pinball toolset.
First, we want to use our two-finger technique to press the flipper button all the way down. Then, with With both our fingers fully extended, use your middle finger to pull on the button edge towards your body, curling that finger slightly. Gradually release the tension on the button with your finger on the button's far edge, holding it in place until the upper flipper is down and lower flipper is engaged. This is the locked in position, and for as long as you're trying to stage flip, keep your middle finger locked in this position. Now, since the middle finger is busy holding the button in place, use your index finger to gently flip on the button's edge. This part is very precise, but there's no need to slam the flipper button and lose that locked in position that your middle finger is holding.
And with some practice using these techniques, you will see your flipper skills and pinball scores dramatically improve.
This has been another episode of Pinball Tips. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more.